We are going to be diving in on an issue that I think is absolutely critical. It's essential to the success of our business today. StatsCan recently did a survey of about 46,000 Canadians and asked them the simple question, hey, how you doing? And probably no surprise to any of us that almost a quarter of the people on that call reported that they were either fair or poor. Almost 88% of the people said that they had at least one symptom of anxiety. Every one of us, I don't know, maybe a show of hands on this, but I know this is true of me, is that when the first shutdown happened and when COVID, all of this stuff began happening back in March and April, yes, there was some concern. Yes, there was some nervous, maybe a little bit of panic, but it was like, okay, let's buckle in, let's do what we need to do and all of this. Fast forward now to September. Latter part of September and then into the beginning part of this month. Certainly for those of us who are here in Ottawa, we saw all of a sudden, some of the businesses starting to kind of pull back. We started to see, okay, we're now into wave 2 and everything like that. And I don't know if some of you are feeling the way I'm feeling, but all of a sudden this time around, it's just exhausting. It's just like, oh my God, when's this going to end? And probably the sense of, is truer this time around than it was in the spring. In the spring, it was, okay, let's take action, let's do. Now it's just like, my goodness, how long is this going to happen? And I'm sure your teams are feeling that way. Our organizations are feeling that way. And so I think it's great for us to take some time to have a conversation around this. I want to introduce our guest today, who is going to really kind of drive most of the rest of the time that we have here. And I was going to take some time to really walk through all of his credentials and give you a great overview of what he's accomplished and what he's like. And I pulled up his LinkedIn profile and I realized that he has way too many syllables in all of the things that he has done and educated himself on, and his degrees and all of this other stuff. And I thought, okay, there's no way I'm going to do this justice. And so let me just put it this way. Nazim is not only somebody that we've gotten to know at Rhapsody over the last little while. Nazim is somebody who has absolutely got an interesting and incredible story of how he has gone from where he was even just a few years ago to where he is now. And so Nazim, maybe you could take a couple of minutes just to share a little bit about who you are and why you would be a person that we would be bringing onto a call to talk about strengthening mental health within businesses, a bit of your journey. We'll get into the meat of things in just a moment, but it'd be great if you could just take a moment and introduce yourself to some who may not be as familiar with you as we are here at Rhapsody. So Nazim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Thanks a lot for having me. It's great to meet everyone virtually here. So when Rob and I were chatting how we're going to start this thing, I thought we'd start off with a little bit of my story because it's not the usual business route that many people take. So my background is actually in molecular genetics and software engineering. And probably about 4 or 5 years in my 20s, I'd worked for a large biotech company. But my nights and weekends were all doing creative endeavors. And I think today you call it the side hustle. Back then it was just creative projects. So we did this little experiment where we would take a sample of our DNA, bring it to a lab and extract it, sequence it, and turn it into personalized pieces of abstract art. We never thought it would be a real business, but it turned to $1 million a year business, totally bootstrapped. And we were able to do it full time for a few years. Rob thought it'd be a good idea to actually share what it looks like because it's not as weird as people think it is once you actually see it. But here's a bit of a visual. So it all starts off with a DNA collection kit, which we send to your home. You swab your mouth, and then you choose colors and size of your artwork, and then we ship you something like that. That looks like your DNA. So super fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and that business went on to sell in the Museum of Modern Art and get a bunch of press, and it was a super fun few years. In 2007, when the iPhone launched, we noticed that it went from, it started going, the growth of the iPhone started growing exponentially. So when we saw all the focuses on the camera, we knew that, photos were going to be ubiquitous out there. So we launched a sister company called canvaspop.com, allowing people to upload their mobile photographs, and we turn it into custom artwork. And that company then started doubling our sales for many years. And we were running both of those sites in tandem, DNA11 and CanvasPop. And then over time, the back end software started falling apart. So we built out an entire ERP that runs these personalized art sites. And once that got really robust, we opened up an API, then dozens of applications that were in our space plugged into our software. And then we became more of a platform. And then continuing to push the evolution, we had bootstrapped the company to many millions in sales at that point. We then raised $3.3 million in 2017. That was the first equity money we brought in. Celtic Ventures, BDC Ventures, as well as Toby Lutke, CEO of Shopify, and another bunch of great angels. And we then basically created an entire platform that allows us to create these very unique applications on CanvasPop that use advanced technologies. That platform is called Creative Layer, and we're in the process now of opening that up to other app developers as a SaaS platform. And that's where I'm at today.
I think it's awesome. And yeah, that DNA, I can just picture that big poster. You know, I mean, I don't know, maybe some of you on the call today, you have a Tinder account or whatever. That'd be like, here am I. Just put your DNA pro picture on. I don't know. Could work in all kinds of environments.
I've been married with kids for too long, so I still don't know what Tinder is yet. But yeah.
The reality is that, and it really is fascinating to see someone with the kind of background and education that you have, and now to be moving and translating that into, you know, just as you said, to create these businesses, to be this entrepreneur, building and leading a team. We were just, as we were preparing for this webinar today, you received notice today, and I think this is pretty amazing to see this happening, is that Invest Ottawa is recognizing your company as one of the top firms for having an engaged workforce in the midst of COVID. And I think the comment was made even that most companies are seeing their less engagement during the last number of months, whereas in your team, the numbers are that engagement level is going up, which is I think certainly a testimony to what you're doing and how you're doing it in order to make sure that the team is staying focused and again, engaged, I guess is the right word to use there. Perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about that, because we're all seeing that with teams when mental health and they're getting the discouragement and that. Talk to me a little bit about that, about how you kind of define out and map out your team to make sure that engagement is happening.
Sure. So, we had a very office-friendly culture. We had a really great, a well-designed office for many years. And when we had to physically pull apart in March, when we started hearing about COVID for the first time and everyone started working from home, that was an opportunity for us to say, let's actually use this opportunity to even make our culture that much better. So we really focused and set the bar to say, we have a great culture now, but let's even bring it to another level. And it'll take that much more focus considering that we're all remote. So the first thing was a lot of intention to make sure that engagement remains. The second thing is we just started noticing people fall into different camps. There was one camp of employees that all of a sudden found all this extra time where they were not commuting to work, and they started, appreciating that extra time. So they loved the work from home aspect. Another group, they had young children at home, and they were really stressed at juggling a lot of things between the children at home as well as their work. So we had to really give them a lot of slack and a lot of flexibility to be able to not put so much pressure on them that they don't have to be on, every minute of the day. And then the third group was, our younger people that don't have children, but that really appreciated the social aspect of work. That group of people we had to treat a little bit differently and start increasing social things that we do remotely and so on. So yeah, it was very interesting to see those different groups and kind of dealing with each group a little bit differently.
And absolutely. So talk to me how you deal with the groups then. So is there a specific model that you are utilizing that allows for that engagement and to connect? Is the model different based on the group? Maybe just walk us through a little bit of the model itself that you're using and how you make that shift for each group.
Sure. So I believe that the only reason that my engagement numbers continued to go up as we went into COVID is because I had spent the previous 5 years really developing a framework on creating a strong culture. And it was a 5-year journey for me because I had gone through a little bit of challenges in 2016. I had some low morale, we spread ourselves too thin across different products. And I really had to make change within the organization. And I started creating a framework around what are all the things that I need to put in place to create a healthy, strong organization so that if we do hit a storm, so let's say a very fierce competitor comes in to disrupt our business or something like this, like a pandemic, we would be strong enough to be able to handle it. And so this process has started many years ago. And I basically built it in layers. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the famous psychology framework called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Most people are familiar with it, but it's essentially all the things that a human being needs to feel safe and secure within society. So these are physiological needs, safety needs, they need love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization around, expression and creativity and so on. So inspired by that, I actually created my own set of company hierarchy needs, I call it, on things that our employees would need to be in to feel like they're in a strong environment where they're both mentally well, and they don't look at their workplace as a source of stress, but rather as a source of motivation. So the first layer, I don't know, Rob, do you want me to go through each layer?
Yeah, please. Let's hear the layers.
Cool.
I think that'd be great.
Cool. So the first layer I defined was stable financial infrastructure and a really viable business model. And the reason I put that on the base of it is without that strong financial security, as well as a strong business model that you can scale, I really feel like you're building a company on shaky grounds. And I spent a couple of years just focused on those two things. And that was an evolution of my business model at the time, as well as a strong focus of financial people around me to create that strength. And I feel until you do that, you almost can't focus on anything else. The second thing that I started doing was stimulating an environment of innovation. So at the time, we'd gotten the existing business, Canvas Pop, up to a certain point. And then we started stimulating innovation. And I believe that an innovative environment actually helps with mental health and wellness, because people feel like, this company is going to have longevity, it's going to reinvest into the business, and it's reinvesting into R&D, and it's going to evolve. And I think that plays a certain, component to your psyche or your positive psyche. So we started having a lot of offsites on defining where our future can go. That was the beginnings of our idea around Creative Layer. And it all started with these offsite retreats, and that really started stimulating a very, very healthy environment.
Right.
After that, the next level was, creating a super strong execution strategy so that people feel secure and they feel confident that whatever plan that we've laid out as a result of, the innovation talks, as well as what we're trying to achieve over the next couple of years, is going to be executed at a world-class level. So we actually brought on the BDC. I participated in a program called the Growth Driver Program. So it's a 2-year program that made sure that our operations were at a world-class level. So it's basically, best practices of Deloitte and McKinsey. They put it together to create all the things that you need to create to really focus and execute on a laid out plan and strategy. And that created a lot of confidence within our employees. And once again, I believe that that affects mental health and wellness, because people don't feel like they're on some uncontrollable ride. They feel like, you know what, I'm in this vehicle, I know where it's going, and the people that are leading it, we're using best practices, and I know how we're executing on it. So I believe that that was a really strong part of what ended up today being a good place for mental health and wellness. Finally, we had spent a lot of time on mission, vision, values, and I believe that that's a super important component of mental wellness as well, just because your employees know that you're creating something larger than the company itself. They believe that, that your current situation can evolve into something so much bigger when we're looking at the mission and vision. So we spent a lot of time on that. And then, of course, living your values. And I used to not think that all that stuff was as important. But I've realized now, with the results from where we were in 2016 to today, which every single metric across my company is up and to the right, I realized how important that was. So once I had stable infrastructure, I had an environment of innovation. I had all the basics, like a strong execution strategy, mission, vision, values. I then started focusing on each employee's just physical environment. So what we did is we invested into ergonomics. And I was thinking, you know what, if they're at their desk every day and they have pain or tendinitis or anything like that, that's going to physically put them in a stressful environment. Let's really make sure all of our ergonomic setup is perfect. So I brought an ergonomics coach and consultant, checked every single person's desk, and then invested into equipment to make sure that physically everyone was working and feeling good in the right state. I feel like I've been rambling on for a bit, so I don't know if you want to add a few things or.
No, that's okay. And I was going to jump in, but I wanted to let you kind of, because I hear all of that, and first of all, I applaud you that you're truly investing in your team when you're doing that kind of stuff, which is, again, oftentimes, and I know this, as a coach, often when I'm coaching with clients, part of the challenge is to, what's the right amount of investment, and then, what's the return on that investment, and how did you make that decision? How were you able to navigate the idea of going maybe too much into the realm of, okay, I'm doing too much to spend on this stuff? How do you determine the ROI on the investment that you're making on the team? And I mean, obviously we're seeing the fruit of that now.
Sure. So like I said, the first layer is financial stability, infrastructure, and all the controls, like the growth driver program, all my coaches, my consultants, to make sure that that's sound. So I have very strong financial people saying, okay, Naz, like this year, we're going to double down on this. We're going to give you this much budget, and you got to stick with that budget. So I have people around me making sure that I'm making the right financial decisions. Now, it doesn't matter what your budget is, as long as you put a certain small percentage of budget towards your larger thing, you can do something. And if you can start somewhere, then at least your employees are going to say, you know what, they are reinvesting to as much as they can. So I don't think you have to overdo it. I think you just have to understand where you are and how much you can afford it in a responsible manner.
So I'm sitting, I'm also sitting here thinking, okay, that's great, Naz. Back in 2016, you started to do all this stuff, and wow, you were just all ready to go, and a pandemic comes along, and you're just rolling along because you planned it out in 2016. What would you say to the business that's sitting here going, yeah, I wish I planned this all out in 2016, but here I am. What are some things could they do now that might implement what you're talking about?
So at some point you need to start. And I think if you just start the process and start engaging everyone within organizations saying, this is where we're going, and we haven't perhaps invested as much as we should, but this is the plan and this is where we're going, that in itself has a positive effect on the employee's psyche to say, okay, you know what? They've realized it. And now they're saying, this is how we're going to get there, even if it takes 3 years. That commitment alone from the CEO, not anyone else, that in itself psychologically, I think really affects employees' morale. And it also has to, I think, at the CEO level, I think, and across the entire leadership team, there has to be a belief that this long-term investment is going to come back, but it can't be a short-term thing. It has to take a few years, right? And, so as I add on to that ergonomics piece, I started even adding more layers to that piece. I now do health and wellness seminars now. They're lunch and learns. Now we're doing it through Zoom. So every month I have an expert that talks about nutrition, talks about stress control, meditation, and that's been really successful. And then once a month, I also do movement sessions. So we'll do a bar class together on Zoom, or we'll do, Tabata style workout all together. So that's been great. Also, we're always every year looking at our benefits to see if we can increase it and improvement. So that, I think, shows the employees as well that we're committed to improving their benefits. And one thing that's really helped is I have one person, her job is called Employee Experience Manager. So her job is literally to look at their employees as customers and look at the employee experience from the second they enter to the company to, their entire duration within the business. And there's all sorts of things that we work on, which are all these layers to improve that customer experience, but it's her full-time job. Yeah. So she is very much a nurturer, and I give her budgets and I give her the opportunity to really put in those programs and have my support and the whole leadership team support. So I think, and also employees know where to go if they have some issues or they need to talk. And all of this, you're essentially creating a really safe environment saying, hey, we really value you. And if you're going through some issues like you're dealing with the pandemic or stress at home, that we have people that you can go talk to outside of just your direct manager. So that, I think that investment has been paying off in spades. Right. Now our goal right now is to work on things like we're bringing in a lot of coaching inside the company so that people can improve on their leadership skills. And that, I think, adds to mental health and wellness because people feel like they're growing. We had lots of workshops this year around radical candor. And, I think Eric actually did a great workshop on getting unstuck, and that kind of investment and that knowledge with our employees has been helping. And next year is going to be a lot around, things like performance management and other things that I think we need to double down on. And all of it's an ongoing process. I keep looking at these layers to see, okay, as the business changed, what do I need to change? But at least there's a framework around it and, some logic around it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to, recognizing the time, in a moment, we're going to shift into where I am going to open it up and really give opportunity for those of you, particularly on the Zoom call, you can jump in with questions and engage in that rather than just me asking a bunch of questions. I do want you to kind of prepare yourself as here's the first question I would have for you after we end the recording. So almost a teaser, those of you that are watching on Facebook, you're not going to get to see the answer to this question, but what are you doing as a leader to make sure your own mental health is in place so that you're able to now serve your team effectively? So give you a chance to think about that. But for those, again, with our call, we do these webinars once a month. We are going to be doing one more this year. We're going to take a break in December and not do a webinar, but in November will be our last one of the year. And we're going to be revisiting something that Rhapsody did. We used to do it every single year around this time of year. And then again in January, we called it the Impact Accelerator. And what we're going to be doing in November is we're going to be walking through quickly in a webinar format. What are some of the questions you should be asking yourself, some of the things that you can be doing in order to make sure that 2021 is your best year yet? And yes, I believe that even with all that's going on, 2021 can still be our best year yet. So we're going to dive into that. That'll be in November. Watch for the emails to go out and all the information. I'm real excited about that. And so hopefully many of you can join us. And again, if you want to be part of the Zoom call, certainly reach out and we're happy to send that link and add you to the invite for doing that as well. So let's shift now to talking about, and let's open it up for some questions, but maybe Naz, take a few moments just to start with, What are you doing on a personal level? We got a lot of leaders here. They got to work for their teams. It's draining at times to be the person that has to be the strength for your team. So what are some of the things you're doing personally in order to make sure you're strong for your team?
So the most important thing for me is my morning routine, and I make sure that I start off my morning the exact same every day, and that morning really is the basis for my personal mental health. So the first thing I do when I wake up, immediate cardio exercise. So I think exercise and mental health and wellness are obviously very, very interconnected. So that's the first thing you do. In the summers, it's a swim, and then if it's out in the winter time, then it's like a hit style kind of workout. I then stretch. Now that I'm over 40 now, I stretch for a solid 10 minutes. So I stretch out my entire body. And then I do kettlebell workout, so everyone can do whatever they want, but just to have some weight resistance. And then kind of shower, get ready, everything. So it's like I'm going into the office, but then I just go in my basement office. And then I start incorporating meditation for 10 minutes into my day before I start. And I use the Calm app for that. And, you can ask Eric, we always are strategizing how to improve my morning routine.
Nice.
So there's certain areas where you got to tweak and everything to make consistent and maximize its effects. But for me, that's been the basis of everything. And then I could be strong then for my employees, my investors, my board, my children, my wife, my everything else going on in my life. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's open it up. Are there some questions that you would have for Naz? I don't know, Trev, whether there were any on the Facebook group, but if not, open it up. Steve, I see your hand raised there. Go ahead and jump in.
Certainly, Naz, something that I noticed in your structured, your layers of making more engagement is that you leaned into your business acumen to create an environment rather than trying to bring in band-aids like exercise programs or health programs or meditation programs, but you did what you're good at, and that's business. And I think sometimes as business leaders, we feel like we need to be healthcare professionals when we're actually business owners. So I absolutely loved the paradigm that says, what can I do within my skills as a business leader to create an environment that allows for this healthy atmosphere? Can you speak a little bit more about that? How did you arrive at that point when you realized you needed to make the workplace just a better place to be in terms of business? Tell me about that process.
Yeah, so between 2005 and 2016, I'd experienced a lot of success during that entire trajectory from DNA 11 to Canvas Pop to our, API and so on. And then it all actually fell apart in 2016. And I went from, I think, 40 employees to 7. That was a combination of layoffs, and it was a combination of people quitting. And it was the lowest point in my entire business career, and it was very hard personally. So in 2016, I had 2 options. One was to close everything down, or 2 was to just start stringing along each day and trying to have a successful day and turn things around. And it was basically 2 things. Number one, it was focus and kind of how I was running the business, to try to bring it at a professional level. And number 2, I stopped really focusing on the people. And I started chasing the wrong things. And I was doing exactly what you said, Band-Aids everywhere. So then I just took a step back and I said, restart, get to the basics, and then start building. So the first thing I did was I joined a CEO group, and then, I had some of those CEO peers. The second thing I did was created a board of directors, which I didn't have before because I bootstrapped it. I took in investment dollars so that there's accountability everywhere. I brought in all sorts of different coaches around me. I joined the growth driver program. And then I just started adding layer upon layer upon layer. And so for me, I was in a bad spot, and I had to have that realization. I don't think everyone needs to get to that spot. you know, it'd be better if you don't get to that spot, but I had to get to that spot. So I know how it is when culture is really horrible, and the anxiety and the stress and how everyone's looking at you saying, you know, we're in, you know, and then where it is today, we're back to 30 people, growing, revenue's growing, we're hiring again. We've got a big vision of the creative layer. And that journey for me has been really revealing, and I've learned a lot.
Let me put you on the spot on I'm going to kind of do a tweak of Virginia's question. She had posted a question that I thought was great in the chat about if you could provide a bunch of the contacts of the types of individuals that you've had come in to speak and everything like that. I know Eric's going to post your Eric's going to post your email address in the chat window so that people can reach out to you and maybe get a bunch of maybe introductions or whatever directly, rather than us take a lot of time going through a bunch of names here. Because I do want to, I saw Rob has his hand up. He had a question, and some others might. What's one type of business or industry? Now, we know the first person you should bring in is a Rhapsody business coach. We all know that, right? But after that, because I know that's who you're going to say, Naz, but next to that, what's a business or a type, an industry, a person that would come in to help your team that maybe we wouldn't typically think of, that you've brought in that has been really well received by your team to really build that morale? Is there anyone that maybe isn't the traditional kind of, well, yeah, of course you're going to bring in somebody to talk on nutrition or you know, some of the ones that, you know, probably we can, is there anyone else that you would have that might be a little bit not as thought that we would think of right off the top? I know I'm putting you on the spot on this one, so.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, of course, I was going to say, I mean, since I've been working with Eric for the past year, things have really gone to a different level, especially personally and professionally. But outside of just pure business coaches, there's probably, so there's this one group, and they're led by a person, her name's Mia St. Aubin. So she's a fitness enthusiast here in Ottawa. And what she was doing is running all of these fitness seminars all across the country. And she had never really been, you know, focusing on corporate. She then became our point person to bring in all of these experts in all of these different areas to manage the entire program. So she brought in former Olympic athletes that had gone through major injuries to come back and make it to the Olympics, that spoke to us on an individual level. She's brought on, you know, all sorts of different experts on all sorts of different areas of health and wellness. So, and I hadn't seen other companies focused on that type of individual to come in and run the entire program, as opposed to the HR manager or the CEO trying to run it, right? And then because she's so connected across the entire country and everyone across, you know, in all these different industries, you can pick and choose the types of people that can come in and speak to your team to fit your group. So I think that was a really important thing. I'd worked with a sports psychologist before as well on how to handle fear and you know, and how to overcome kind of self-limiting beliefs and so on and so forth. And that was interesting. I'm sure I can think of more because I brought so many people over the years, but yeah, that's been really
cool. And I know Sophie even suggested maybe we can provide this and maybe send out a follow-up email with a list of some of the things that you suggest. Trevor will follow up with you on that as well. Rob 100%. Smith, I know you were wanting to jump in with a question.
Thanks, Rob. And thanks, Nazim, for all of your information so far. It's great. I think we were 40 under 40 the same year.
Yeah, I remember you. How are you, Rob? Good to see you again.
Good. Yeah. So I've got two questions. One is, so I've been checking off the boxes along with you, saying, yep, okay, you know, joining a CEO group, very helpful, very helpful. But then you brought something up that has never occurred to me, and I think it's just simply the idea of, well, maybe we're not big enough or whatever, but you brought up board of directors, and you brought it up after saying you had dropped to, you know, 7 employees, and we're you know, slowly building back up again. So I think that's been my barrier is, I never felt we were big enough to create a board of directors, and what sort of got you to that point, and how did you put that together?
So there's really two groups. There's the board of directors that came along with the investment. And when I took the investment, it was actually capital from a group of people that believed in me that I could turn around where I was in 2016 and create something, and so that was one thing. But then the other is a non-formal, more advisory board. Yeah. And so you don't have to create an official board of directors with voting rights and so on, and tied to equity, but a board of advisors, I think, is super helpful. You could compensate them through cash. These people can be retired, CEOs or COOs, or executives that you really gel with, and you can have a group of them that's touches all certain specific areas of the business, and just do monthly calls with them and treat them like they're your board. And that's if you're a bootstrap company, a self-funded company. That seems to be the best way. And you should actually really take it so seriously that they hold your feet to the fire, and you want to make sure that you commit to them and you deliver on the commitment. So it has to be people you really respect. Over the years, I've had people like Richard Labbé, former CEO of MedEng, sold to Alan Vanguard for like $600-700 million. And now retired. I brought him on board as a coach. Toby, I go to for many years. He became an angel later, I think that would be a great solution for you.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And just quickly, my last one is your morning routine. How did you formulate that? Because I've been trying to get one for myself, and you go online, and apparently it involves avocado toast and if I follow all those, and I don't think I'd have any time for work.
Yeah. So I just started. So once again, I think I always learn from being in a bad spot. So in my bad time, I ballooned up to over 200 pounds. I was not taking care of myself. I was doing all the wrong things basically in 2015, which led to the events in 2016. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to also start taking care of myself. And I did a bunch of things. Number one, I started saying I was a very extreme kind of personality, going on extreme diets and then crashing and not sticking with it. So I just changed the lifestyle. So I got an app called Noom, Noom, and it basically, so you might have done it. So it tracks all my calories and how much I ingest every day. That doesn't put so much pressure on the exercise. Then I just slowly start adding layers to it. So the first layer was the cardio. The second layer was the kettlebell stuff to increase muscle mass. The third layer was Calm, the meditation app. So I'm constantly just adding a little bit, but not overdoing it all at once. So for me, it's taken a couple of years, but now my entire lifestyle has changed. And then I have rules around alcohol, how much I can have, a couple of glasses of wine, but they kind of stop at 2. And you start figuring things out for yourself, so it's this constant communication. Now I work with Eric on this. I say, okay, this worked and I didn't have a great result. This worked and I'm starting to get much better, and you track it. But I think the recurring theme in all of this is a long-term approach.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I so appreciate that approach to things, Naz, because we certainly talk about it in our business. We should be tracking numbers. What's our dashboard? What are those metrics? Is it working, not working? Well, the same should be true in our personal health development. Is this working, not working? How do we know? What's the metrics that we're using to track? And then I love that permission to just build layers rather than you have to do everything all at once. Yeah. And introducing one thing at a time. And to Eric's point in the comment, deliberate, disciplined, and determined. Is such a great approach to that. Listen, I want to just say a quick thank you to you. I'm going to give you just an opportunity, one quick summary around what you would say to encourage these fine group of leaders who are trying to lead teams, lead organizations in the midst of everything like that. One last little thing that you might offer to them as we come up to the end of our time here, and I'll just kind of turn it to you for the final thought, and then we'll wrap up the call.
Sure. So I think not everyone has to employ this kind of culture within their company, but if it does appeal to somebody and then they're kind of at, not, quite at ground, they're still at ground zero, then I think the key is just to start. And it's like the good to great analogy where it's a flywheel and it starts off and it's really heavy. And I started that reinvention in 2016, but over time, when the momentum picks up and it comes back from the business results as well as the employee love and results, it just feels so great. So I think the key is just to start.
That's great advice. Thank you again so much for your time, Naz, for taking, being able to share with us some of those insights. This has been tremendous, very helpful. And encourage everyone. Hope you can be on our call in November. And it'll be the third Wednesday of November. And that information will be sent out. Of course, we'll be promoting that. Hope that many of you can be on the call. In the meantime, again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope that the rest of your week is absolutely wonderful. See you again.